Spanish moss. There is nothing more classically or gothically southern than this wonderful plant right here. I mean, this is the stuff the South is made of. I mean, anytime I think of swamp, I think of Florida, I think of Louisiana. My mind doesn't go to beaches and palm trees. It goes to this wonderful, gorgeous plant. And I just want to sort of walk through the yard and show you the morning view of it. While I'm going to tell you all sorts of facts today about Spanish moss. One thing is not Spanish and it's not moss, so those are some interesting facts about it. And look at that, just amazing. And the song that always comes to my mind when thinking about moss is that Seven Bridges Road from the Eagles, Stars in the Southern Sky. Well, I just imagine that southern sky with the moss hanging down. Anyhow, so to get a good look at it, we're just going to get up close in here. One thing it is, we're going to talk about what kind of plant it actually is. It's called Tillandsia usneoides. And I'm going to pause a second because I know I pronounced that totally wrong, but I'm going to, you know, put the name up there so you can see exactly what the name. Again, another name, which means it lives on a host, but it's not a lichen. Now, a lichen will feed from the host, whereas moss does, or this does not. It's also in the pineapple family. So, anyhow, so it has no roots, and it collects its moisture, and it mostly gathers calcium out of the air. And if you can see these little tiny cracks, right, I'm sorry, I just zoomed up at myself, but anyhow, these little cracks right here in the moss, that is where flowers will form. And yeah, those are most of the facts. Now, it has I call it old man's beard. It's always to me been called old man's beard, and it is a nickname name in the South, but we're going to go back to the names. Like I said, there's like a whole mystery along this plant. Now, there's another plant that is called old man's beard that is a lichen, and but anyhow, how the name, the Tillandsia usneoides, is what the usneoides means is like Usnea. Usnea is an entirely different plant, that it is a lichen, and I'm going to walk around a second and see if I can find an actual lichen, so you can see the difference between this moss and a lichen type plant. But anyhow, I'm just gonna sort of walk around and get a morning view of some of the moss. Look at how it just hangs down. So one of the things about moss that people always say is that it kills a tree. It does not kill a tree. It does not live off of a tree. But what happens, especially like this tree right here, if it slows down growth or it gets ill, the lichen grows faster than a tree, and it will help the tree to remove some of the moss because the branches will break under the load. And also, if a tree is dying, the moss will start to grow quicker because it spreads itself by little pieces falling off and blowing in the wind and getting on another tree. So when the moss senses that its host plant is dying, it will grow faster, deliberately. So a lot of people really, there's people and you either hate it or you love it. Some people think of it like cobwebs, dirty, something I need to get rid of, or people like me romanticize it. To me, it's completely romantic. We're going to get up under here and get a good view. This is one of my favorite trees on our property, and I do need to remove some of the moss on it because I believe it's a turkey oak, where the branches just twist and turn, and at certain times of the day, the way the sun comes through it is just outstandingly beautiful. So yeah, that is, and I wanted to notice, I kind of noticed it before, it grows on some trees, not others, and it does prefer to go on the side of the sun. Like these trees back here that are a little shaded, you see less moss on them. They like to grow where they're going to get a little sun and rain, and they also filter the air somewhat. So anyhow, that's it. We towards the end of this video, there's some old folklore that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the different uses, how to preserve it, and about the Great Fire of 1905. So just hold on and give me a second. We will discuss that in a minute. Thank you. Okay, so here's a perfect example of a lichen that it's also called Usnea, and I don't have a good example of a long one that would make you think that it's like old man's beer or like Spanish moss. I think this plant is more prominent in the Pacific Northwest. It grows so thick there that it does look like a old man's beard. Now you could tell that this attaches to the tree, whereas actual moss, these plants, right, actually we have air plants attached, and that looks sort of like moss, but the fact that it's attached to the tree is not the same Spanish moss that we're talking about. Our Spanish moss is this guy right here, and it drapes over a plant, and that's how it'll carry itself. You take another little piece and you put it out here, or it blows across and it lands on another tree. Look at how pretty over there. And it will start growing. I have some more mossy trees here in the morning. And so yeah, look at this one over here. Now some people want to know how to grow this in their house, and you can, or I know some people have, but I don't see it as a long-lasting event. And all you do would take a piece and drape it over something, and soak it in water 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, just literally soak it in the sink and hang it back up. And I think you could, have it grow for a while like that. But yes, it is just gorgeous. Excuse me while I see how pretty it is this morning. Anyhow, yes. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what a piece of dead moss looks like. And the reason why I want to show you this is because one of the big uses for moss was with the sheath removed, and how it gets like this piece I just picked up in the yard. I didn't treat it in any sort of way, but they basically take this and put it in a big vat of water and let the outside let the outside layers rot off, and then they take this and they dry it out, and they have this material left. Now this material, I believe they used it in Model A cars. They've used it in for mattresses, for pillows, for making cordage. Yeah, so it's very, oh, and also the Indians used it for scrubbing pots because it is much coarser and it does have that sort of rough texture like an SOS pad. Now there's several ways that you could treat moss to bring it in your house, and I was going to bring that up too. You know, everybody always says there's chiggers in moss. Well, scientifically they have never found chiggers in moss, but there are over 3,200 different kinds of little creatures that do live in moss, and that is why it's itchy. And if you do want to bring it in your house to grow it, I would recommend at least a thick dunk. Now there's different ways to treat it for different purposes. Some people say to boil it and then dry it out. But the smell is just terrible on that. You could also put it in the oven for a very low temperature. Remember, this is very flammable. And then also that you could take 1 part glycerin to 2 parts water, and then put the moss in, and that will bring you a green product that's like good. They use that for packaging materials, for hobbies. It's like the stuff that you see packed in all your little knickknacks, and it can be kept in a green form, or it usually comes in green or dark or natural, or they even dye it. And so that is a pretty neat use of it. So, is moss edible? I thought I was going to get a picture of my chickens eating the moss because they generally do, but right now the turkeys want to show off a little much. What I want to say is, just because you can don't mean that you should. I'm going to pick up this piece of moss for an example. At the very ends of it is the new growth, and that is said to be edible. I know that they make teas for medicinal purposes, and like I said before, I heard that if you boil it, it kind of smells like swamp muck. And I have tried this, but it very much tastes like cardboard or wall fiber or something like that. But that doesn't mean it's not edible. Those chickens over there might be eating some moss. The chickens, they do like to eat freshly dropped moss on the ground. They'll come over and they will pick, and it has been used as fodder. Now, some resources say it's not edible, whereas some say it is. Like I said, I've tasted it, and if you're stuck in the swamp and you have nothing to eat, the very ends of it are edible, but it tastes like plaster for the most part. So yeah, you can eat it. It's been used for medicinal purposes for a long time. The Indians have used it. In 1952, they discovered that it had antimicrobial properties, and it also has some estrogenic properties and several other things. So people used to put it around their neck for a neck ache, for a sprain. They put it in shoes for hypertension. So yes, the plant is edible, but do so with caution. the FDA warns against using it, and that's why a lot of people have refrained from recommending it because but in Cuba, in Mexico, and a few other countries where it grows, it is still used today for modern medicine. So if that gives you any hint as to its healing properties. Like I said, it's not the best thing in the world, so I'm not going to use it for that, but I have found that it does do good as a mulch to put around your plants to keep weeds out, so I've been using for that. They say you can use it to create ropes, and it definitely has a cool haunting effect, and I might try the glycerin thing for natural packaging materials. I think that would be awesome. I have to see how cost effective the glycerin is and how much it costs to see if it's, you know, even worth going through that effort. And so that is about it for the medical properties of moss. So one of the folklores I heard or I read about what came out of the Carolinas, it was about this Indian lady who was, she was an old woman, and the settlers had kicked her from her property, and she died of heartbreak, and she had long gray hair, and she more or less cursed these settlers that anywhere they would move, the moss would grow from the trees resembling her hair. But I love how these old stories have these moralistic vibes to them. There's always a catch in there. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting story, but it's always been like I said, old man's beard or pirate's beard or stuff like that. So in 1901 in Jacksonville, Florida, there was what they call the Great Fire of 1901. I know earlier I mistakenly said 1905, but it was 1901. In 1905 was this was the first largest, which was a big fire in Chicago. But anyhow, in Jacksonville, they had, it was called Cleveland Mattress Factory, and it was a factory that made mattresses out of moss that, look at it just blowing in the wind. A factory that made moss that had caught fire, and they said it burned 148 blocks. And I love the sensationalism. Even back then, they said that they could see it from Raleigh, North Carolina to Savannah, Georgia. 17 people died in that fire, and something like 3,200 buildings were destroyed. So it is still the second largest fire recorded in the United States, but that is also another interesting fact about moss. So I hope you enjoyed me talking about moss today. I try to gather as much information. To me, it's such a cool, mysterious, it's kind of like the unicorn. It's just one of those fanciful plants, and you get used to it when you live with it. When I was up north for a while, I truly missed it. It was, like I said, one of those things that you think of when you think of Florida as, to me, it's living, whereas people think of it as dying items in the tree. I did look up to, just being a gardener, it grows naturally from zone 8B to 11 in high humidity places. So in case any of you are looking to grow a spot of it or try to, those are the conditions that it likes. Anyways, have a great day, and I hope you are romanticized about the moss as I am. Bye now.